Hi there, my name is Derek Murphy. This month I made about $1,600 publishing on Kindle. I wanted to make kind of an earnings video showing my books, my content on Amazon, and also I'll run through the 5 big important things I think you should know about self-publishing if you're planning on publishing a book in order to have a freelance passive income writing career rather than an expensive, time-consuming hobby. So I make that distinction right off the bat because most authors are not interested in earning money, or even though they have the dream of being, famous, they're usually looking for validation, not necessarily profitability. Um, and I'm somewhere sort of in the middle. I'm definitely about the craft. I intend to write the best books that I can manage, and I'll talk about that in a bit about the productivity stuff. But I also feel like I know what I'm doing, and still there isn't a ton of profit on the table. 1600, passive income sounds pretty great, but once I break it down, with all the work involved and the investment involved, it may not sound so attractive. But I'm going to lay out sort of these 5 important things that you should think about if you want to sell more books. And then I'll talk about some next level things that I'm going to start doing soon to get this up closer to about 10,000 a month, which is my target. So this platform that I'm using is called Book Report. It's just a way of showing the details from my Kindle page in a way that, looks really nice. It's a paid Chrome plugin, although it's free for I think until you're earning $1,000 a month or something like that. I may go into my KDP dashboard to show you sort of behind the scenes of that. KDP recently had a few great updates. One of which is that it presents the sales data in a more user-friendly way than it did before, but I still prefer Book Report for kind of just getting a quick, at a glance summary of how my books are doing. It also says that I've earned, 1,600. I was going to make this video at 1,500, which was yesterday. Now it's the end of the month. I've made about, this much money in a month. It says by those 85 books, but actually almost all of that money came from these top 6. I don't have 85 books. I probably have 20 or 30 on Amazon, but some of them are partials. I probably have published something like 7 or 8 nonfiction books and 15 novels, I think. But I've yet to complete a series for any of my fiction, which is really important. I'll talk about that in a minute also. So let's jump right into my 5 things. The first one is content. Unlike a lot of other YouTube tutorials about publishing on KDP, I've seen a lot of low content publishing strategies. If you just want to find a way to make money online and make passive income, low publishing content on Kindle is very attractive. I started trying to do some of those things like 5 years ago when the adult coloring books were in vogue. I never really focused on them very hard. I never really made any money with them, but I'm familiar with that whole concept and strategy. That's not what I'm talking about here. I have a background in, as most people who like writing books do, a background, with libraries and bookstores, and always kind of wanted to be an author. I got into fine art for a long time, and then I kind of went back to writing after I was helping a lot of clients as a book cover designer or a book editor. I finally just started writing my own books. So the first thing to think about if you want to publish anywhere, but specifically on Amazon, is your content. What product do you put up on your Amazon page? Because your book is a product. So it means writing to market. Are you writing the things that people actually want to read? Are you trying to do that? Or are you guessing what you think the market wants without really doing any research? You do have to do some research to find out what's selling. There's a huge difference in terms of who's performing well, how much money they can spend on advertising, what kind of covers they look like they have, whether they're trad or self-pubbed, because this is a whole different tangent. But I was recently on a panel of book marketing people, and one of them was a famous trad selling 6-figure traditionally published author who's brilliant. I love her books. So I was happy to be on the same panel with her, but at the same time, a lot of authors who see big success, they've never had to do any of the work in terms of choosing their book covers or writing their blurb, or even like doing the heavy edits, although that's a different thing. Um, Building a blog, building an email list. Most traditionally published authors have to do a lot of work. It's not true that if you traditionally publish, someone else will do the marketing or the work for you. But a lot of the easier decisions in terms of design, positioning, packaging have been done. So the authors who work tirelessly to sell books, they usually focus on social media, and they don't necessarily know that their efforts are selling the books, because they get paid through their publisher. They don't really have real time statistics or data to be looking at in terms of what efforts are paying off. And they sell a lot in bookstores. They may be working really hard on social media and say that's my strategy, that's why I'm successful, when actually they were successful for totally other reasons. I'll talk more about social media a little bit later. I think my point here was just, someone who is indie publishing as a full time business, like myself. I'm not necessarily doing great. I'm not, famous writing world changing literature, but I'm doing okay. And it's basically a pass fail. You're either one of the 95% of authors who never sells 100 copies, whose book is dead on arrival after the first couple of weeks, or you make it work gradually over time with more books and more education and more experiences. You figure out how to make it work and you start making a little bit of money. It's not usually a very quick thing. So you have to have a lot of patience and determination to not only improve your craft, but also improve your publishing knowledge. Once you do get to the point of basically breaking even and you start to experiment with advertising, then it becomes possible to scale very quickly, because the more you spend on advertising, the more you're earning, the more you can outbid other authors, especially when you have a bigger backlist, which I'll talk about. But it's sort of like when you hit this, once you figure everything out and everything is working and you have enough content, then it can be a really nice way to generate income. So while I will say this is hard work and it might take you, a few years to get there, on the other hand, when you get there, it's a pretty nice lifestyle. It's a pretty nice business to be running once you're sitting on a lot of content and you know what you're doing. So just for fun, I looked back at the history. I started publishing in 2013, and I've made just over six figures. Like I said, I still feel like I'm just starting this year. I hope to finish a few series by next year, maybe 5 series in the next couple of years, 10 completed series, 30 books, fiction. And then I think I will be spending a lot on advertising and everything. So within 2 or 3 years, I hope to be at 6 figures a year just from book publishing. So in my 5 step plan, the first one was content, which is not just about the types of books you're reading, but also what people are searching for. The main thing with fiction and nonfiction is you won't have the opportunity to communicate why people should want to read your book. A lot of authors will say things like, my book is entirely different. It's like nothing else on the market. It doesn't fit in any genre. And they think those are selling features, and they really aren't. Readers don't have time, and they're usually not looking for a completely novel reading experience. They're looking for more of the same. They're looking for comfortable, easy reads that make them feel things that they can, consume, basically that will hold their attention, which we'll probably talk about later. But the main thing is that your book has to be what people are searching for, and it has to show up when people are searching for those things, and they have to agree once they've bought it that it is what you said it was. So that's mostly what I mean by content, except it also really helps to have more than one book. It's very rare to have lots of earnings from one book. Most people start seeing a little bit of traction with 3 or 4, and then the big money comes after 15 or 20 books for a lot of indie self-publishing authors. This isn't always true. I have friends who have 1 series out or even just a couple books out who do really well if you get everything right. But I would caution you to think that the first few books you publish are mostly a learning experience. Even if you try your best to make them perfect, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And that's valuable because if you did just get lucky with those first books and make a bunch of money, which is great, when the market changes, when Amazon changes, the things that you were doing don't work anymore, then you're kind of stuck because you never knew why those books were already selling because you didn't have to do the experimentation to figure out what's working. So if you get lucky, that's awesome, but it's not sustainable. To have a sustainable writing career, you have to know enough about everything to be able to adapt when things stop working. So number two is visibility. And there are two paths to visibility. The first is blogging, the next is advertising. Basically, it's either free content that takes your time to build a network of stuff that shows up when people are searching for things, which is a blog or a website, um, or advertising, where you're paying to put your book in front of certain people. This could include offline stuff like a billboard, which I don't recommend. I think Amazon ads or Facebook ads are all you're really going to need. Those are probably the two most successful paths for advertising books. BookBubs is another one, but I think it's tricky and it can be really expensive. So I would start with Amazon ads and then go into Facebook ads, spending like $3 a day, testing some different creatives and trying to get more visibility. You can actually see I had Amazon ads turned on for the first half of this month. I think I spent $500 on Amazon ads, and I wasn't really happy because I was making about 800 for 500 ad spend, which, after cover design, formatting, not even counting the time I spent writing and editing the books, which is a huge amount of time investment that most authors don't even calculate into their earnings. And also because the Amazon ads, they don't really track well. So, on my Amazon dashboard, it says I'm spending this much and I'm making this much. And actually, I can see here, I turned them off because it didn't seem like those ads were actually doing anything. But when I turn them off, you can see that it dropped quite a bit. It's almost getting back up there today. But the last few days when I turned the ads off, there was a pretty immediate difference. Although weirdly, it seems like this is probably just a fluke, but when my ad spend went down, it looks like print copies went up a little bit. I don't know why that is. I don't think that's a correlation. Most authors will tell you that making an author website is not worth it. I tend to agree. I've had this conversation with a lot of friends because websites don't really sell books. It's not going to be really strong. It's not going to be a strong traffic flow. It's not going to be strong conversion because even on my main website, Creative Indie, I get 75,000 hits a month. But, something like 75% of those people stay for less than a minute. They don't stick around. They're not really listening. But what tends to happen with blogs is if people keep showing up and you keep giving them good content, then you have a really nice opt-in offer for a free book or whatever, they might sign up. And then you can put them on an email list. And I'm going to talk about that later. But the thing with blogging is that it's free. It does take a lot of time to build up. I built urbanepics.com, which was a genre-specific platform rather than an author brand name, which is what I recommend because it's very difficult to come up with new content for an author platform. It's easier if you have a genre-specific platform. I review books in my genre, young adult fantasy mostly, or I try to look at what people are talking about on Reddit in the young adult groups, because especially controversial topics or whatever is newsworthy, I can write a blog post about that, and then I rank really well for articles who are looking for the controversy. Then I get people to my blog. I have a Facebook pixel. I could retarget the traffic that comes to my blog, and I know that most of them are searching for relevant topics related to my genre. I could retarget them with a free book offer or a discounted book offer, and try to get them, to buy something or to get back on my email list. It did take a long time to build up. The nice thing about blogging is that, you can write 30 to 100 blog posts. I don't blog often, maybe once a week, but over time, you have your own real organic traffic that you're not paying for. I think that's always beneficial, even if the conversion is really low. I also think in terms of building an email list, although it's not a really direct way to do that. But having something to offer other authors in your genre. The other thing that works really well for visibility is cross promotion, where I will feature your book in my email list and they will feature my book in their email list. Basically, it's an email swap. There are different sites that make it easier to connect with other authors and do an email swap, like, now I'm going to forget them all. Book Funnel is the one that I use. I think Story Origins is another. There's some different platforms now that try to make it easier for authors to host ARCs, advanced reader copies, or free books, and give them away to readers. And they also make it pretty easy to set up like multi-author discounted pages so that, 10 or 20 authors shares the same page. All the traffic goes to one page. All the books are deals or discounts related to a theme or a genre. That works okay. It's not as effective as it once was because now everybody is doing it. But my point was that, until you have your own email list or your own blog platform, your own audience, you don't really have anything of value to offer. So you're always just going to be asking for favors or like asking people to support you by sharing your work, which is a difficult thing to ask. I know as a creative person, you kind of feel like, you worked hard on this, your friends and family should support you, but that's not their responsibility, and readers aren't going to support you just because they want to. You have to make it fun or engaging. And even if they did share it, they may not have the audience you really want. You want other authors in your genre to share your book with their audience because that's the audience you want to reach. But the other really important thing, almost before visibility, is conversion. So that was my number 3, conversion, which means if you're sending the right readers to your book, do they buy? Does it attract them? Are they interested? The way it generally goes is they'll see your book cover first. They might see your little tag or blurb if you're advertising. They might see the number of reviews and the review rating. But mostly it's title and cover. So the title, I have other videos, lots and lots of videos on YouTube about cover design and why it's important to get the right cover. These are probably like my 5th or 6th versions of these particular covers. I kind of keep updating them as I get, better at graphic design. I also buy a lot of pre-made book covers if I see fantastic art or cover design, even if it's just a prompt, a story. Cover design tends to range like $500 is a reasonable price for a very good designer. You can get them cheaper, but it's a balance between, are they good at the illustration? Are they good at the typography? Are they good at your specific genre? And then even so, if you're the boss telling them what you think you want on the book cover, that's probably not the right thing, because what authors think they want on the cover is like a scene with very specific details. Your cover is only to communicate the genre and to be attractive. For most fiction, that means a character or a humanizing element and a background, one mood, one color. These are almost all too colorful. These are like, they're pretty good. They're like 85% good enough, but they could be a little better. I'll probably revise them. And these are covers that I've, spent way too much time on, playing with all the details. They're a little bit too busy. I tend to be a really busy designer. And I think some cleaner pre-mades that I could buy or could have bought would have worked better. So I might try those out. And after you publish, you shouldn't be afraid to try out new covers or get feedback if you don't think it's working. After the cover, they'll read the blurb really quickly. The cover is the genre. Is it attractive? It looks cool. The blurb is specifically, what is this book? Most authors focus on like the story. That's not really what you want in the sales blurb. You want the hook, the tagline, the conflict, and the sympathetic character. You don't want to, too much detail, too much plot. Just kind of like, what's at stake? How is it important for this character? You want to use a bunch of keywords that let readers know they're in the right place. You don't just want to have the story. You want to have, this is a young adult urban fantasy set in Europe based on Greek mythology. Hit a lot of keywords and be really specific, even about, if you write romance, the heat level, the age group, or fans of this other best-selling author will like this book. You want to make it really clear and obvious. that this is a book like what those readers actually want to read. And then you also want to try to have at least some unique characteristics that make your book the same and different. They want something that's similar to, but different in a unique and fresh way. So, that's probably going to be your premise or your setup. So it's like a crippled boy in a wheelchair meets an orphaned witch after she pickpockets him, or whatever. Just like the starting premise with the interesting characters, and then the big stage conflicts that they are going to have to face and overcome, and why it's important, what they personally have to risk to achieve the outcome. Blurbs are hard to write yourself. There are services that help. I have sometimes like hired 3 or 4 different blurb writing services and then tried to use some of what they come up with. However, I kind of feel like I'm not perfect at blurbs, but I'm getting better. And a lot of my best blurbs are not well crafted, in the sense that I don't, follow a formula and map them out. They just kind of come like maybe a year or two after I publish the book. I finally figure out what the perfect hook or teaser is. Now that I'm deeper in the series, now that I have a deeper understanding of the conflicts. I do have a really long post on creativeindie.com about blurb writing with a whole bunch of different blurb writing formulas and examples, so that might be useful. And then the third part of conversion is your reviews. And this is really tricky because if you're not selling books, or if you're not giving away a lot of books, you may launch without getting a bunch of reviews. You need, people say like 1 review per 100 reads, but even if you get 100 sales, probably 50% of those people aren't finishing the book. So that's a really low number. You'd have to sell thousands of books just to get a handful of reviews. So you do need to do some work. It's really annoying to do the work of getting reviews, but you can't do any marketing until you get them. This is why building an email list so that you can reach readers directly, a Facebook page, which doesn't really get any engagement, and a Facebook group, which recently is also not getting a lot of engagement. So I use those, and I might talk about those in a minute, but they don't work very well because when you post things, nobody really sees what you're posting. So an email list allows you to access your audience directly and let them know and remind them, would you please review my book? I hate asking for things like that, but you kind of have to multiple times. You have to keep encouraging them to read the book, even if they read a free download. So you got to be a little pushy and consistent. On the other hand, you want to be very sensitive that some people may not have liked your book and they can't tell you that. So you want to give them an out. You want to say something like, if you have time, if you read it, if you liked it, but if you didn't have time, I totally understand. That's the other thing. If you're reaching out for like reviewers and you want to send them a review copy, sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit. If you're trying to reach out to like big influencers or book reviewers who have a blog or website, that's okay. I don't think it's very effective because they probably are inundated with requests, and that kind of visibility might drive a little bit of traffic. If you're trying to do like a big nonfiction book launch, you want to reach out to influencers 6 months in advance with a great cover, a great blurb, some initial reviews because nobody wants to be the first to take a chance on a new project, and an easy out. So like, could I get a maybe if you have time to read the book, and then check in with them, and then it's launching tomorrow. It's launched. Just letting it's the first week of the launch. Reviews are really important. You want to check in like 3 times. But if they didn't like the book, you can't like keep pressuring them to review it. If they're obviously stalling, maybe they tried to read it and they didn't get into it. Maybe they didn't like it very much. Or maybe, they wanted to say yes, but they didn't realize what a big favor it's going to be. Asking someone to read your book, especially if they're not loving it or it's not in the right genre, that's a really big favor. It takes a long time to read and consider a book. If you're asking reviewers for a book review, some readers want to be supportive, but they don't know what that looks like. And they think they have to write like a book report. So you might want to, while you're building an audience, let them know, just a quick 2-sentence. I think it's got to be 25 words or something. So if you liked it, just real quick, let me know. It can be really short. Don't make it a whole big thing. So my first book, my first novel is 150,000 words. The other thing I forgot to mention with content is that if you're in Kindle Unlimited, if you're getting paid by page reads, you will also have some earnings from the page reads, and it's calculated differently every month. But generally, those earnings are pretty good, maybe better than the price of the book. This is one I really need to finish the series because it's one of my best sellers. It's got over 700 reviews. I think I first published this as like a half book, and then I combined it with the second half and I re-released it as a full book. It was really a messy process, but because I gave it away for a while, it racked up a lot of reviews. The more books, the more readers you have, the more reviews you're going to get. So especially for book one in a series, it can be advantageous to give away a lot of copies until you have enough reviews. On the other hand, I don't need 700 reviews. You can have 25 reviews and still sell really, really well. You just need enough reviews that people believe that the quality is there, because they're not going to believe it if you don't have more than 10 reviews. You also need some negative reviews because they're not going to believe the 5-star reviews without having some contrast. So I know it sucks to get negative reviews, but hopefully a good negative review just screens out the wrong people. They mention things that are kind of true about the book that some people don't like. You might get some reviews that are just like, this is the worst book ever, this is a terrible writer, and that those always hurt. But that doesn't really mean anything as long as some people are liking the book. Those are the people you want to focus on. So my second most popular book, I've still done a lot of free days. With Kindle Unlimited, you have 5 free days you can use every 3 months. So I will tend to discount it maybe twice a month, and then every 3 months give it away for a few days just to reach more readers in the first book in the series. Obviously, giving away a free book, doesn't really do anything unless you have more books in the series. But this eventually will be a 5-book series. I just put out book 4. So now I can actually, focus on book one a little harder. And again, I don't need 500 reviews, but they're nice to have. This book, I had a BookBub deal a few years ago, which is why it did really well for a while. It was up in the top 500 of Amazon. Got a lot of reviews because it was selling really well. I haven't been able to replicate that again yet. I was at like 8 or 9,000 a month, which is my best month. But I hope, once the book is done, I have to redo all the paperbacks. I have to do all the audiobooks. Once you have a lot of content built up around a series, it just gets easier to profit. The thing that works the best that I haven't experienced yet is when you have a completed series, you turn it into a box set, and then you can run ads straight to the box set because it's a really long, there's a lot of pages. So if you get someone in the box set in Kindle Unlimited, even if it's like 99 cents, in Kindle Unlimited, you'll get paid by the page read. So if I have this series, will be like 300,000 or 400,000 words altogether. It's a long series. So I'll get paid when people read through the whole series. It's an easier product to advertise and to profit from, but I have to finish my series to really start experimenting with that kind of marketing. I am also really interested in Kindle Vella, which is coming out next month. So I'm going to have some new series that I only publish through Kindle Vella. It's sort of like a serialized fiction platform, and they're going to pay you. Readers are going to get tokens, and they'll use their tokens to unlock episodes. So it'll be a different structure, which is mostly just so Amazon can try to buy up the market share from competitors. But it'll probably be profitable for some authors for a while, and it's a way to reach more readers in the short term. I don't know if it's going to work out long term, but I'm going to try to get on board this summer and see how that plays out. So down here are my actual earnings per book. And some of this, like, it was doing better because I was using the Amazon ads. So some of this I may not actually be in the profit. But the Vampire series is 2 books. The Greek mythology series, like I mentioned, is 4 books. So I've been advertising, book 1 basically, but book 3 made the same amount of money. Book 2 made about the same amount of money. And then this was a new release like a month ago, so it's selling a little bit better. But that's like $600 or $800 from fiction. And then I also have some nonfiction I use D.S. Murphy for fiction and Derek Murphy for nonfiction. I also have Drake Mason, which is a pen name that I use for some ghostwritten stuff or co-writing stuff. So I've got a few different with Author Central. You can claim 3 different pen names. I think because it's all on one Kindle account, that's why it all shows up here together. You do want to keep your platform separate. So my nonfiction books don't make a lot of money. I give away most of my nonfiction books about writing and publishing anyway, so they're not in Kindle Unlimited. Bookcraft is my new one that I published just about the craft of writing. And it had a really rocky start because it's sort of heavy. I think people got used to my really easy, organized writing resources and outlines, which are super useful. I try to make Bookcraft like a heavy, not academic, but like philosophical type of book. Basically, like I had all the free content. I didn't want to just republish the free content, so I put a lot more into it, a lot of stories, a lot of personal stuff. And not everybody liked it. Some people really like it. A lot of people don't. So it's still doing okay, but I'm not pushing it really hard. I think I'm at like 90 reviews. It's not terrible, but some of the one-star reviews are really, really bad. So I'll kind of see how that plays out. I also just published a nonfiction version of that. I don't think necessarily nonfiction is better or easier than fiction. I'll talk a little bit more about craft in a moment, but it's really just what the market wants. I like this book better. I spent way more time on it. It was a lot of work, and it doesn't sell as much, or it sells, not much more than some of my other nonfiction, which I wrote in a month. I wrote really quickly. I don't particularly care about. So even though it's doing fine, it is a longer book. I'm probably satisfied with with having written it. But if you're interested in learning how to write, I would start with my free YouTube video series or my free courses on writing or editing over on creativity.com. You'll see all that stuff. So I've talked about content, visibility, conversion. The fourth one is branding. Branding is how people feel when they think about you or your book. So it could be the design of your website, your book covers, but it can also be your author photo and the way you dress, the way you speak, the way that you write your emails or your tweets. It can also be your curated content. What kinds of things are you interested in? What kinds of things are you sharing or retweeting on social media? So the first 3 things I talked about, that's mostly what I use to just help teach self-publishing authors. Because if you don't have a good product that converts and nobody's seeing it, then nothing else matters at all. But once you have those things, once you have a reasonably marketable book with an okay cover, a good blurb, enough reviews, and there's a ton of competition and you can't advertise profitably to get the ball rolling, the other thing that you can't really measure that's very valuable is a fan base of readers who have read your book and they like your books and they like you as a person enough to support you. And that last bit's really important because they might like your books, but they don't know or care about you. They're not really going to be very active about sharing your work, even if they enjoyed it, unless they feel like they know you a little bit as a person. And you can only build relationships through repeat exposure over a long period of time. So getting them on your social media, interacting with them, if they send you an email, sending a reply, getting them on your email list so that you can send them value over a long period of time so that hopefully they'll eventually become fans. It can be a little awkward. Like if you only write a couple books a year, you don't know what to talk about, you don't know how to keep them engaged. You can always be curating content or just sending I like to do something like, and I don't do this, but I should. I would have an email series, which is like once or twice a week that goes for 3 months, which introduces each book one or each series in a unique email around a personal, vulnerable share or story or anecdote, because you always want to hook attention with story, get them to feel things and think about things. You want to leave them with a picture in their mind, and then you turn it towards, this inspired this series, which is about this. Here are some reviews. You really should send 2 emails per product. So like Now that I have a backlist, once I get some series completed, I'll be redoing my email series, and I'll do something like an auto resend campaign where, once a week, maybe I'll introduce one series, but I'll send 3 emails trying to get them to click and to go read that first book. So it might be, the motivation behind writing the book, and then it would be what other people are saying, maybe the reviews, and then it might be an excerpt or read the first chapter. And sometimes you can test this out, but sometimes just like posting the first 10 paragraphs right in the email just so that they see it, they don't have to click anything. You're probably going to get people on your list who haven't read your books, or they forget what your books are about or what you write. You can put a blurb in some reviews, that might be enough. But if you can just get them reading immediately, just like, here's the first, what I like to do is like, here's the first 5 paragraphs. Click the link to read the first chapter. They go to my website where I have the full first chapter, and then I can have links. I would probably have more reviews, and then I would have more links to go get the book on Amazon. So it's a whole process. It's not just go buy the book on Amazon. You want to slowly warm them up. Don't assume they're going to click the link, because most people won't click the link. Most people won't even open the emails, which is why you want to send 3 per product. This is, again, not something I'm even doing, but I will be doing once I have a big backlist and a bunch of completed series. I'll really be focused on conversion. If they read one series, I want to make sure they sign up to my list. I want to make sure they are introduced to everything else that I've written. Partly that's just because it's easier to sell products to one client that's listening than pay to outreach to try to find new clients, but also because your bigger supporters are going to come from followers who are engaged with you over a long period of time, rather than, advertising. Somebody clicks a link to buy the book, but there's no connection or relationship. They don't know who you are. They don't care. That's different from branding, where people know your name, maybe they know your face, they have feelings about your lifestyle or what you represent. So you have to be a little choosy about your author brand. I'm pretty casual, but people sort of know me as the castle guy because I sometimes rent castles for NaNoWriMo, or they know me from my hair because I often have long hair until I get tired and cut it off. The final thing you want to think about is number 5, which is satisfaction. And this actually could be the first thing. It's pretty important, but you generally don't, like, you always write the best book that you think you can. And when you finish it, you're usually pretty excited that it got done. The problem with writing is that the more you write, the better you get, and the more critical you will be of your own work. So it always feels like you're not improving, or even that you're getting worse, when actually you are improving. But writing is a skill, like, even if you think you're a good writer, writing books is a skill that can be learned. I almost think it's a disadvantage to think you're a great writer, or even to be a great writer, because you're probably going to be too much in your head, and you're probably not going to be focusing enough on plotting and story architecture and suspense and intrigue, which are so important for writing fiction. There's a way to write quality fiction. I talked all about it in Bookcraft, or my nonfiction book, because most people write books poorly without any guidelines or any outlines. It takes too long. It's not going to satisfy readers, even if you get a lot of content finished. So the missing ingredient is basically, even if you can tell the book, do they read the book? Do they read, or do they get bored after the first couple of chapters and give up? That's going to affect your page reads. It's going to affect your word of mouth. It's going to affect your sale through, which is after they finish the first book, do they want to keep reading the sequel or the third book? So that all comes from craft. And I know that there are, most of my very successful writer friends didn't study a particular craft. They read a lot. They're good writers. They have their own unique style. Their books sell really, really well. And that's great. You will probably be, you already have your own voice. You already have your own style. But every author has things that they don't feel great about doing. It might be action scenes. It might be backstory, intrigue, character development, scene description. Every author has weaknesses. You want to at least shore up your weaknesses to make sure that they're adequate, so that you can lean into your strengths. Some people are pantsers, some are plotters. Both have very significant advantages. I'm a plotter, I prefer plotting, but I also think my best writing comes from the seat of my pants. That's what pantsing means. So I will do really heavy plotting. I will always try to figure out what happens in the story. But then when I write, I'll go to my Bluetooth keyboard or my iPhone, blank page, um, and I'll just, I have a couple of sentences. I know what happens in the scene, but that's it. And then I just have to, write it down. So that's stuff that comes out without the hard lines. That's usually the best, most creative, best writing stuff. But the hard lines make sure that it matters and you end up in a satisfactory character arc or story resolution. I have a lot of stuff on Write the Magic or Creative Indie, but I recommend Bookcraft, which has a lot of things. There's also on YouTube a free fiction writing series somewhere on my YouTube channel. So that has some really powerful stuff and rules to follow that are basically like training wheels, where you can learn to write better books so much faster. It'll save you time on the editing and the revision and the anxiety of writing books, which will also help with the procrastination and the productivity if you're not actively avoiding the resistance because you don't really know what you're doing, which is extremely common for writing books. But this is also something that you learn on the job. So, like, you can't just study craft forever and just get it. All my guidelines and resources will help you to write a book faster. It will be better. The first draft will be better. You'll learn faster, but you're probably still going to have to write several crappy books before you write a good one. It's also true that the rough draft is always bad. So this month I'm revising and editing a book that I worked on with a co-writer. But even when I first write my own stuff, it's still really bad. Like, you have some good stuff, you have a lot of bad stuff. That's why I have like a 5-step revision and editing process. I have videos on that on YouTube also. But when I edit, a lot of it is, where's the character motivation? Does this all make sense and flow together? It needs more conflict. It needs more suspense and intrigue, which is about information management, where and how you do your twists and reveals. All the like important stuff that gives a satisfactory reading experience. A lot of that is late revision, editing, or rewriting. That's not the stuff that happens. First draft is usually just what happens next and figuring out what happens next and why that, how and why did the characters have to go from scene A to scene B. That's just the what happens. That's the first draft. It's never going to be very satisfying, but you got to get it done before you can do the revision. So those are my 5 tips: content, visibility, conversion, branding, satisfaction. I'll post that list below. Maybe I'll turn it into a blog post and link over to Creative Indie. But I have tons of stuff on YouTube that will be really helpful in terms of book marketing. There's a whole video series from my Guerrilla Publishing program with some really deep, publishing and book marketing. This is exactly how I launch book stuff. I think that's really useful. In terms of writing, there's probably 10 or 12 hours of really good, the craft of writing content on YouTube. But then I have tons of stuff on Creative Indie also. So if you're not familiar with me or my brand, subscribe on YouTube, follow me on Creative Indie. I put out a lot of content while I'm also struggling with the craft of writing and publishing books full time. Like I said, I'm excited, to be making some money, but I'm more excited to think about where I think I'll be in about 2 years. Once I actually finish, 3 series, 5 series, it's going to get easier and easier from this point to start making a bigger profit. So I'll be posting videos, as this number gets up higher, as I publish new books. And I'm always learning new things about marketing or publishing or writing craft specific stuff as well. If you have questions for me, you can ask them in the comments or send me a message, and I can make a video for you. Thanks. Bye-bye.